Hello and welcome back to another episode of We Are Meant for More. Today, you're in for an extra special treat. We have Gail Tagarro here with us. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you, Karen. Lovely to be here.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you.
Thank you.
So Gail I'm going to read your bio if that's okay, just to
Sure,
give the audience a real accurate view of who you are.
sure. Thank you.
A book writing coach. I love it. It's amazing work. All right. So, Gail Tagarro, the book writing coach, is a book writing coach and published author of fiction and nonfiction books. You're an accredited editor and former journalist with a Master of Arts in English and Spanish. And you just released your latest book, your third book this January. So, we will surely dive into that. And I'm excited to hear a lot about that.
Thank you.
So you've been coaching and supporting writers and aspiring writers since the early 2000s. And in your signature book coaching program, the Book Writing Academy, you work directly with aspiring writers to write and complete publishing ready fiction and nonfiction books to communicate their knowledge and their stories.
That's
This
right.
This is exciting. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Karen. Yeah, it's great to be here.
So tell me how you got started with this career and where it all began.
Sure. So I've always loved writing, was always good at English at school. It did take me, I always talk of myself as being a late starter in everything in life somehow. So it took me a long, long time to come to do what I'm doing now. And I won't go into all the other things I did, but it was back in the 1980s because I'm from New Zealand originally, but I live in Australia now. I went back to university or college, as you say, and I did a degree in English and Spanish. I did a bachelor's and then a master's. And then after that, I was thinking of going into academia, but I ended up doing something completely different and going into the corporate world and doing writing for corporates, all of their policy and procedure documentation and all of the IT documentation. So my role was the go-between between the end users, or between the tech guys or tech people and the end users, and then I translate the nerd speak into what normal people understand for the manuals. And after doing that for a few years in the corporate world, I went out on my own and I worked for, I consulted to a lot of different corporates, including Vodafone and the telephone company Telstra and airlines and things like that, doing the same thing. So I did that for 15 years. And then we decided to move to Australia. And by that time, I had kind of reached the end of my passion for doing that. So I took a year off. I wrote my first novel. And then after that, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought, right, I've always been good at English. I like it. I'm very pedantic. I like, to read good English. So I then qualified, worked towards qualifying as an editor, a book editor. And I did. So then eventually I set up my own business and I did that from the early 2000s. And then after a few years, I realized that a lot of the books that were coming to me for editing were not actually ready for editing. And there were also people who were asking me, could I coach them? And so that's how I sort of entered the coaching realm through editing, and and then set up my signature program, the Book Writing Academy. So I've been working with writers ever since. Yeah. helping them produce their books.
I love it. So it sort of found you.
Yes, I guess. That's
Mhm.
a good way of putting it.
So as you started to lose your passion for corporate and kind of felt pulled in another direction, was it hard to let that go and actually pursue this new career path?
It wasn't hard to let it go, no, because so I'd been working in the corporate, well, sorry, I'd been working as an employee in the corporate world for a few years, and then I'd worked for 15 years for myself in my own business doing the same thing. And no, I'd come to the point where I really had enough of that. Especially because I was working mainly in the IT world, and I'm not a tech person at all. I'm, not that kind of person, and the energy in that sector is quite hard to cope with. So
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely come to the end of the line with that type of work. But yes, transitioning to a new career, as anybody who's done it will know, was a challenge, sure. And yeah, I had to upskill, I had to learn, like I had to get qualified, and so study and exams, and then I started on that path. And then again, transitioning from purely editing to coaching, to book coaching. That was another step, and that meant, a lot of I guess work on website to, and thinking about the courses that I would run, and eventually the one that I've settled on as the most helpful is the 6-month Book Writing Academy one, because that's what it takes. That's the
Mhm.
time it takes to write a book. When you're working with someone who's sort of supporting you and helping you all the way, it takes at least 6 months.
Okay. So then
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about your program, the Book Writers Academy. So it's a 6-month program. And without giving the whole program away, um, can anybody write a book if they have the desire to do so?
Yeah. I love that you say, can anybody write a book if they have the desire to do so? Because I think that's the key.
Mhm.
And the very simple answer is yes, because I've worked with so many people who have never written a book before.
Mhm.
And when you have the desire, and when you have the passion, and when you are willing to take on board feedback, I think you can anybody can write a book, can learn to be a writer. For some people, it's a lot more challenging, obviously. I mean, I've worked with at least, well, recently, excuse me, early morning frog in the throat. Um, uh, Recently, I've worked with 2 ladies whose language isn't English. And so obviously, for them, the challenges are even greater.
Mhm.
But yes, with that desire, that passion, and that willingness to take on feedback, I've found that anyone can write a book, and it can end up being a really good book because they're willing to take on feedback, which means they're willing to learn the skills of, for being a good writer. Yes.
Yes. That's
Hmm.
so exciting. And more recently, which is how I met you through this collaboration of women and the Women Thrive community. I have been in the company of so many women that are writing books. And I've always thought of that in the background of something that I would like to do. But I, never really thought it was something that was possible until more recently. So, when somebody comes to you with their story, how do you guide them through what their version of the story is in terms of not losing their story, but yet coaching them on tweaks and things there so that it still has their, I don't know, their story to it?
Sure, their author's voice. Yes, their
Oh, that's
voice.
beautiful. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, look, that's also a great question, Karen, because yes, it's something that I've always really it's so important, to keep the writer's voice. And obviously I'll help someone with expressing something in a better way, but I will get them to sort of talk me through it, and I'll say, okay, you've written this, but tell me what you mean exactly, because sometimes we write something that we think sounds good, or we think it should be written that way, but it's not exactly expressing what we want it to say. So I'll say, so tell me what you mean by that, and I'll listen to them, and then I'll say, okay, well, how about we say it this way, because you've actually just said exactly what it means, and it sounds better than what you had written there. So
Mhm.
in terms of the whole book, it's a process, like anything big, because yes, writing a book's a big project. And it's a process. So it's, we start off with, generally what works for most people is getting the structure, like getting the book structure in place first. And I say most people because it's a one-to-one program, and it's really important to tailor, I tailor the program to each individual writer, because everyone needs something different. A lot of people need, like, everyone is going to need the same as everyone else to a certain degree, but then they're going to need specific guidance in specific areas. So yeah, it depends on their genre too, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a step-by-step process, and it's, getting their chapters written week by week, and having the feedback, and having the accountability that it's kind of like having a bit of a dragon school teacher in the background. Um, when you know that you have to have something ready for someone the next week, then you do it. Whereas if you're kind of doing it on your own and you think, oh, I'm a bit tired today, or I deserve a break, then you won't put so much effort in. But if you've got to have a chapter written for the next week, well, you get it done.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because accountability is huge in a process that might feel somewhat daunting at times if you're getting stuck or you're feeling frustrated. Me personally, I'd be more likely to persevere knowing I'm going to meet with Gail next week, and she's going to see that
Yes.
I've done something. It's nice to stay on track and not get lost.
That's right. Yes, yes. If there's two things that are common between with all the people that I work with writing their books, it's that they need accountability and they need feedback on their writing, to know that they're going in the right direction, to know that it's good enough. Yeah. So those two commonalities are have been interesting to note. There's other things as well, but those would be the main things that people have in common that I work with. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, very exciting. Could somebody come to you in any stage of their book, even if it's just an idea?
You're amazing. Your questions are amazing. I mean, you're just getting, right. Yeah, like they're so good. Yes, yes, yes. So while the the program is the Book Writing Academy was originally designed to start to go from start to finish, I've found that in practice, in reality, people come to me at all different stages. So yes, sometimes people just have an idea. That's very common, just an idea. And they don't know, what to do with it, where to take it, how to start, and everything like that. Other people have written quite a lot of the book, but they're completely unhappy with it. And when that's the case, I'll look at it and give them feedback, and we'll decide if they can actually use it, or whether mostly we can use part of what they've written, but there's going to be a lot of rewriting that's necessary.
Mhm.
Some people have been working for 20 years on their own, trying to write their book, 20 years. And come up against a wall every time. So yes, out of what they've written, there's generally going to be something that we can use. So yeah, to answer your question, people come to me right from the beginning, or partway through, or some people might have even finished, but they're not happy with it.
Okay. So
Mm.
to the audience, I mean, I think it's exciting because I think people might even just have that little inkling about a book they'd like to write or have already written, but wouldn't have any idea what to do with that. So it's exciting to know that anybody could write a book if they had the
Yeah.
desire to do so.
Yes, yes,
And
it is. It is exciting.
yes, and they could come
Yeah.
to you at any stage in that process and get the help so they don't feel so paralyzed by overwhelm.
Yes, overwhelm and imposter syndrome is a big one with writing a book, where you think, who do I think I am? Why do I think I'm good enough to write a book? What on earth am I thinking? But those people have probably been, wanting to write a book for many, many years. And so there's that, like you said, that desire there, that passion is there. And you need that desire and that passion to carry you through the process, because it requires discipline, work. And yeah, so I help with that self-belief,
Mhm.
not just the accountability and the feedback, but that self-belief, giving positive feedback. And like when I offer critique or suggestions, that's what they are. They're positive, to help them not only write the book, but gain confidence in their ability to write. That's a huge thing. And it's so wonderful to see people who come, with no real formal training, and they just absolutely want to write their book. And then, like after however long, I mean, yes, the program's 6 months, that's to get your book written, the first draft.
Mhm.
And then, like a few months down the track, they're actually publishing, and they're just mind blowing and so happy.
Right. That's quite an accomplishment.
It is indeed. Mm.
So, to the listener that's listening right now, who has this little thought that they have been wanting to write a book, they might even have an idea, but imposter syndrome, and maybe they don't even realize that's what it is, that maybe that's setting in or holding them back. Is there anything you would say to that person right now?
Sure. So if you believe, or if your book if it is important to you to write your book, like if it's something that you really, really strongly desire, and you feel ready to take the leap, then give yourself the chance, have enough self-belief to say, yes, I really want to do this. It's really important to me to get my story out to the world, or share the knowledge that I have. So go for it. I just did a post yesterday actually about the type of writer that I work with is a serious aspiring writer. So aspiring writer means someone who hasn't published a book before, but serious, by serious, I mean they're ready. They've got the desire, they've got the passion, they're ready to commit. and not just say, because so many people say, I want to write a book. How many times have we heard that? I want to write a book. I'd love to write a book. But to go from there to actually taking the action is a big enough leap in itself. But yes, if you're really, truly passionate about that book, then believe in yourself enough to take the first step and start.
I love it. Absolutely beautiful. And
Thank
speaking
you.
of books, tell us about your book. So you had your third book released on January 3rd, and you're in the process of writing a fourth.
That's right.
Tell us about the one that was released in January.
Sure. So it's a non-fiction book. It's a travel memoir. So I have a big connection with Spain. I was married to a man from Spain for 30 years, and we have a daughter. I've lived in Spain and I've traveled extensively through Spain. And so yeah, I love Spain so much. And my book goes from the 1970s when I first went there, which was like not planned. My trip to Spain wasn't planned. I went over to England like a lot of New Zealanders and Australians do. But I ended up in Spain 3 months after I left my own country. And so the book goes all the way from the 1970s. It's divided into 3 parts, all the way up to 2019 when I went back and I spent 2 weeks in a tiny, tiny village in Granada in the south of Spain to finish my novel, which was the first book I published in 2019. So it's like, it's like stories and funny things that happen, and serious things too, right from when my first introduction to Spain all the way up to 2019, just before all the COVID stuff happened. And yeah, like I lived through I was living in Spain when Francisco Franco was the dictator. So I lived through the dictatorship and saw everything that was happening, under a dictatorship. So, and really interesting things that don't exist now in the Spanish culture. So yeah, it was a delight to write, and yeah, I was so excited to release it on the 3rd of January, which would have been my mum's birthday, which makes it more significant. Yeah, I wanted it to be on that date.
Yes, it makes that very meaningful.
Yes.
Yes, and it sounds like a fascinating book.
Thank you.
Where can people find that? And I'd love to share the link too in the show notes for people too.
Thank you. Yes, I can. How do I give that to you? Because I've got the links for the US.
Okay, yep, I'll get those from you then after the call for sure.
Sure.
And we'll just put them in the show notes.
Okay. Thank you for asking.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. Where can people find you?
Where can they find me?
And I will put the official things in the show notes, the links.
Sure. Okay. So I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook too, but I use it less. And I'm on Instagram as book writing coach, or one word. And on LinkedIn, I'm Gail Tagarro, the book writing coach. So, but yes, I can give you my website and email address as well. So everything's got, like, the email address is gail@thebook-writing-coach.com.au. So it's all around my name and the business name.
Perfect. And we'll put all the actual links in the notes for everybody.
Thank you.
For all those serious aspiring authors, they should reach out to Gail. I think it's fascinating what you do. Are there any points, or actually, and one other thing, that you've provided a special gift for everybody? Could you tell us about your templates that you
Sure, with pleasure, Karen. So yes, I have a template, or it's a framework for starting your book. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the very first things I do when I start working with a writer is to set up a framework for the book, because if you don't have a framework, it's like a house without foundations. It's just going to collapse. So to have that framework in place is the very first thing that most writers find incredibly helpful, to have that structure. So the template or the framework that I provide free is called Scaffolding for Scribes, and it's available on the homepage of my website. So yes, if people would like to try writing their books on their own, they're welcome to download that, even if they later decide that they need help and would like to work with me, then it doesn't matter that they've already got it, because we will just continue working with that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I love the title, Scaffolding for Scribes. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Anything you would like to share with the audience that we haven't touched upon? Anything about you, your work, or any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom, yes. I was just thinking that a moment ago, that I should have thought of something here. Karen, I'm just sort of offline here.
No, you can honestly take a second, and this right here, this part will be cut out. This isn't live or anything. And you can,
no, that's great, because I remembered saying something in. Could I just look it up?
yeah, you know what I'm doing? I'm just gonna pause. So, Gail, any parting words, anything that we didn't cover, or any words of wisdom before I let you go?
Sure, Karen. So one of the things that I say to all the writers that I work with is get it all down first. There's no book until there's a book. So what I mean by that is when we're writing, most people who write, we want to go back and look at what we've written, and we want to make it perfect. And we spend a lot of time doing that. So instead of progressing, we're just going back and back and back. And that's what happens when people work on their own. They're just trying to make it perfect the first time around. But the way that works for absolutely everybody I've worked with is not to do that. Get your first chapter down. Then, we'll go over it together and I'll give you feedback. But then you're going to write the second chapter and we're going to go over it again and I'll give you feedback. And then you're going to write the third chapter, and so on until the end. And what happens in that process is that not only are you getting the book written, but you are also subconsciously taking in all of the feedback that we're going through every time we meet, every week. And you are subconsciously applying, that knowledge or those sort of skills to the writing that you're currently doing. So even without realizing, you're actually improving. So once you've finished writing your book, you'll find sort of halfway through, you'll think, oh my God, I'm actually improving. And then you'll go back and look at chapter 1 and you'll think, wow, what a difference from chapter 1 to chapter 30 or whatever. So that's a great tip, even like if you're working, even doing it yourself, to get it all down first, to write it first, and then you will actually have a book to work with.
That is amazing advice. That is fascinating. And it makes so much sense because there's continual progress. And then all of a sudden you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I've written a book.
I've written a book. Exactly. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Oh, this has been so much fun. I think your work is amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate being on, and what you do is amazing too. And what you told me about your own journey has been incredible. So I can only wish you the very best in what you do too.
Thank you. And to you as well.
Thank you, Karen.
And to the audience, thank you so much for joining Gail and I. And I will put all of Gail's contact information in the show notes. And thank you to Gail for you. Thank you to you for being here. And
Thank you, Karen. It's been such a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
yes, the pleasure was mine. And to the audience, thank you for being here for another episode of We Are Meant for More. We'll see you next time.